Welcome to Second Take, the show that focuses on the issues behind the news. Nuclear energy has been in the spotlight this week with a commemoration of the tragic events that precipitated the nuclear accident at Fukushima in Japan. The event coincides with the intensification of nuclear discussions in South Africa. Terence Creamer joins me to discuss developments. Terence, welcome to Second Take. It seems that opinions on nuclear are divided as ever a year after Fukushima.
That's correct. After the Fukushima accident, after the tsunami and the earthquake, there was a view that maybe the nuclear renaissance is over. So the World Energy Council actually did a study a year on into whether the renaissance is over. There's definitely been a slowing. People have done a rethink, but there's still 63 reactors being built around the world in 50 countries. And apart from those countries in Europe like Germany and Switzerland and Italy that have decided to totally withdraw from their nuclear programs, those programs that were in place in places like South Korea, China, India are going ahead. So the feeling at the World Energy Council is that it's sort of business as usual with the overarching feeling that safety and the public debate around safety is in the spotlight and will have to be. There has to be a democratic discussion bringing the public on board around nuclear safety. But they're saying that the technology is being built and they still see a role for it in the future energy mix a year after Fukushima. And they think that a number of countries will still pursue their nuclear programs. On the other hand, The Economist did a sort of nuclear discussion in their cover this week. And they're a lot less bullish about the future of nuclear. I think they're saying the transformational effect that nuclear was expected to bring when it was first mooted or first started to be built quite a few decades ago is really dead and it's over. But they say, yes, the plants will continue being built. But their view is that it's not so much only the safety risk. And they say it's a major risk for a private sector utility, because if you have a public backlash, as you've seen in some of the countries, and there's a closure of plants that need to run for 40 plus years, it can be a major problem for the private sector. It's not just that risk, but it's the economics of nuclear that they think aren't really coming to the fore as initial advocates thought they would. So nuclear programs around the world, whether they're in France or Finland or elsewhere, are way behind schedule and over budget, they claim. And they're also saying that the economics of bringing down the price of nuclear, the environment's not really in place for the sort of innovation that needs to take place. As we saw in the hydraulic fracturing industry, it really was about private sector innovation, small innovative companies looking at ways to release this resource. They don't see that happening as much. It's really dominated by large industry players that move a lot more slowly. The innovations are really, a lot of the focus is around safety. And the small nuclear program, we had the pebble-bed modular reactor program, that could maybe bring that cost structure change. They say that the environment's also not really there to support that. So quite a difference of opinion, as usual. I'm not talking about the safety and the environmental aspects so much, but on the economic front and whether it's good whether it fits into the energy mix. There's still those debates, even at the sort of formal level where we're looking at things from an economic and from an energy security standpoint, not to mention, all the things around waste and all the things around nuclear safety and what happens in a case like a Fukushima accident. But there's division even at that level. So you've got the World Energy Council saying it's going to be a very important part of the mix. In fact, they say no technology, as we go into trying to deal with this energy poverty around the world and the need to create jobs and sustainable energy as we grow as a population, can be either idolized or demonized. That's their argument. On the other hand, you've got, I suppose, economists agreeing with that, but saying nuclear is not really coming to the cost party as we had hoped.
In South Africa, it seems that nuclear is firmly back on the agenda.
Yes, South Africa, also did its soul searching post the Fukushima disaster. We set up a task team. We don't really know the details of what that task team has told government, but we have seen the creation of this nuclear committee under Kgalema Motlanthe, and this is the new sort of nexus around which everything will revolve nuclear. So it's really been taken outside of an Eskom program, because we had the Nuclear One false start where we invited a couple of consortiums to bid. In that case, it was just the French and the Americans, Japanese, that looked at the Nuclear One project. And it's gone into, at a different level, a government level, central government level, to say our Integrated Resource Plan 2010 says that nuclear is part of the mix. It says that we should have 9,600 megawatts of capacity built between now and 2029, 2030. We heard the Minister Peters, the Energy Minister, say that we are now at least a year delayed on that program, because we had to take into account the lessons from Fukushima. We also have to look at the economics of a nuclear program. There's been a lot of discussion in the public domain about the price tag of a nuclear build. We first heard that horrific figure of 1 trillion rand, which we don't know if it's far off or not. We then seen this other figure of 300 billion rand, which I'm sure is also not accurate, which is in the budget review, because if you look at the other figures in that list of 43 projects, none of them really take into account some of the interest during construction. So they use, for instance, for the Medupi power station, the sub 100 billion rand type levels, rather than the 120 that includes the full figure of interest during construction, etc. So I don't think the 300 billion is correct, but we have been told that we need to be patient, and there's a lot of technical work that has to happen. And it does look like government is committed to pursuing the nuclear program, but there's a public discussion around risk benefits that hasn't happened. I think government's going to be a lot more sensitive to that discussion post the e-toll saga in Gauteng, where that discussion probably wasn't handled very well. So I think that delay of 1 year is possibly optimistic, but I also think we might start seeing some movement this year on the nuclear program. And there is talk about the first request for information or request for proposals possibly coming out during the course of this year. So yes, it's back on the radar. Whether we're an outlier, as some are suggesting, or whether we just, as maybe the economists and others are suggesting, people are moving away from nuclear, or whether we are part of this so-called nuclear renaissance, albeit at a slower pace, remains to be seen. But it looks like we will have this nuclear discussion, like it or not.
There has also been some news flow recently about those possibly preparing for a bidding process.
Yes, the main news flow actually came out of France, when EDF, the big French utility, mentioned that they're looking at setting up a consortium, to a Franco-Chinese consortium to bid. So with the Chinese Guangdong Nuclear Power Corporation and EDF. That consortium looks to me a sort of a broadening of the consortium that we saw the French bid during Nuclear One. And that was confirmed this week by Avenge, one of the construction companies, because Avenge was part of that original bidding consortium for Nuclear One on the French side. And they said that the CEO, Roger Jardine, said this week that the Chinese will have a role to play in that bidding process. They're looking at as competitive a bid as possible. That implies that there's going to be a different sort of technology approach, possibly to the EPR that was offered at Nuclear One, which is being deployed in Finland and in France at the moment. And those are over budget and very expensive, but are seen as the sort of latest and the greatest technologies, possibly a different type of approach, a Chinese approach coming through. But that's really just the one bidding consortium. I think with the fact that it's been taken out of Eskom and gone beyond Nuclear One, I think we'll be talking about a lot more people looking at the program. So the Russians have already expressed an interest. The Koreans have expressed an interest. And of course the Americans, Japanese, through that Westinghouse consortium that bid originally, I think will also be interested again. So it won't be just the two consortiums this time around. It will be a bit more competitive than that. But I still think that we've got a long conversation ahead of us, and it's going to be some time before we see shovels in the ground.
Terence, thank you very much. That is the Second Take show for this week. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time for more news analysis.